Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to the third session of MMPH 002 Human Resource Development course. So, in our previous two sessions, we have understood the basic concept of human resource development. We have understood the basic aspects, the dimensions of human resource development, and where we have understood that it's all about developing the competences among the people, developing a set of commitment within the people, and developing or building a culture, organization's culture, which will foster the basic objective of human resource development towards the achievement of organization's goals. In this process, we are going to continue with the basic HRD processes and methods in this particular session. Now, as we discussed earlier, also, human resources were assumed to be one of the most important resources, most valuable resources, right? But later on, the concept changed where we have treated human beings as the assets, not as the resources, right? So, whenever we do talk of human beings to be treated as assets, a continuous process of development, a continuous process of enhancing their competencies, their attitude, their knowledge, their skills, their abilities, capabilities, efficiency, efficacy, all of these are required to be adopted on a continuous basis, day-to-day basis. The reason is the influence that we do have because of these exogenous external factors, which make these organizations to adapt to rapid changes. And unless and until we are supported with the required human resource skill, knowledge, abilities, achievement of the objective is not possible. So human resource development has to be treated as a continuous process. So it is not a one-shot affair that we need to consider. So that is the reason whenever we do focus on human resource development processes, we need to talk of certain processes which can add value to the organizations. Now, we understand that human resources are the valuable resources, but they do have their specific set of characteristics, where we have understood that whenever dealing with human resources, we have to deal with the human resources in terms of humanization and humanism aspects of the human beings, right? So they do have their own set of beliefs, thought processes, psychological processes, social processes, all of those things. So whenever we are dealing with human resources, a holistic approach has to be taken together. Not that we will only confine with the skill, knowledge, and abilities of the people related to their role or related to their job at the place of work, but a overall growth and development of the human resources are also required. That is the reason why you can identify 6 such important aspects of the organization where we say, if managed properly, can add value to the organization. So these are the things which we call it as the value anchored HRD processes. And the first such process that we need to take into consideration is about the individual employees, where we say that growth and development of the individual employees' personalities are also a very important aspect. Now, some or other, it is very difficult for us to develop the attitude or the learning aspects of the individuals. Skills can be enhanced, knowledge can be enhanced, but when it comes to personal attributes, it will be very difficult. So that is the reason why whenever we are dealing with individuals, we need to focus on some of the basic attributes of the individual. We need to develop the self-management abilities of the individuals, self-disciplinary abilities of the individuals. So where beyond the
Being fit isn't only about looking fit.
टेटली ग्रीन टी इम्यून ग्रीन टी की गुडनेस अब एडेड विटामिन सी के इम्यूनिटी पावर के साथ, जिससे आप लगे सिर्फ बाहर से नहीं अंदर से भी फिट एवरी बॉडी कैन.
Judgmental abilities, certain aspects like leadership abilities, all of these aspects are to be developed, starting from time management to contributing with their best efforts. Each and every aspect is important. So under this safe management, what we do is we imbibe certain or we integrate certain personal attributes within the individuals. At the same time, when we have understood that developing the certain competencies are important, the second aspect under this individual employees to develop all those competencies which are managerial competencies, decisional competencies, might be leadership competencies, might be technical competencies, whatever it is. So, starting from the personal competencies to social competencies, each and every aspect is required to be focused on, right? And we also think of the career growth options of the individuals at the place of work. No? So that is the reason now each and every individual employee should have that learning attitude, learning ability, so that they can learn, adapt themselves to newer things, and they can really cope up with the challenges imposed on the job at present or at future. So individuals are the core such aspects of the HRD processes. Then we have understood that not only procuring those individuals will help us out in achieving the objectives of the organization, but at the same time, whenever we talk of these individuals, so having a proper match between the role of the individual with the role of the organization is also an important factor. We need to develop the individual in the role that is assigned to him. We need to develop the role itself. All of these aspects we have discussed it earlier, right? So whenever we talk of the individuals, at least at the present time, considering the present scenarios, we need to focus on the level of stress that these individuals do undergo at the place of work should be reduced. May it be social, may it be psychological, right? May it be personal, or may it be family related. But each and every individual, when they undergo the level of stress, that stands as a negative aspect of their productivity. So maybe we should focus more on counseling sessions, mentoring sessions, guiding sessions to help the individual employees to overcome the level of stress they do undergo at the place of work. So not necessary that the stress will always be related to the job related factors. Other factors are also responsible, but we need to overcome all of those factors. That is what we need to take into consideration, right? We are talking of the linkages that each and every role does have with other. So how do you satisfy all those expectations? How do you justify the linkages that the role that you play in the organization will have with others? So that is the reason why developing that individual employee in the role and developing the role are two parallel concepts. Both are to be taken together so that we can achieve the objectives. And whenever we do talk of this role, to provide a sense of ownership, to provide a sense of loyalty, belongingness, can we have this autonomy to be decentralized to the bottom level? Can we have the decision making ability decentralized to the bottom level? Can we develop that sense of ownership at the bottom level? So all of these aspects are to be taken into consideration when we do talk of this role that the individuals to play in the organization. The third aspect is the direct relationship we do talk of. Is the relationship between the higher authorities and the subordinates, between the superior and the subordinate, between the manager and the workers. We do talk of that. The survey says perhaps the first reason for which people do prefer to quit a job is, of course, payroll related factors. But the second reason why do people do prefer to quit a job is when they don't have a good relationship with their higher authorities or with their colleagues. So if we do not take or give emphasis in maintaining that relationship that the workers do have with their higher authorities, then perhaps productivity will not be there, but we say moreover there will be labor turnover. So that relationship which exists between the workers and the management must have a level of trust. The higher authorities should have that trust on the subordinates. Subordinates, in contrast to that, should execute that trust. Like most of the time, it has been observed that these higher authorities are not able to delegate the things to the downline managers, to the subordinates. The reason is they express, of course, they don't have that level of trust. They don't believe that the downline managers, downline authorities can really cope with the demand of the job. Now, nothing wrong if being a higher authority, I do play the role of a path setting leader. I can do it. I can help others to learn. But some or other, if I'll not be able to delegate the things to others because of lack of trust, right? So then it will be a burden on me, and it will be a problem for the organizations also. Like you cannot have a second line of competent authorities, right? So that relationship has to be developed, which has to be based on trust. Similarly, the concept of mutuality should be there. Let us do it together. So, equal concern for people dimensions and equal concern for production dimensions should be there. So, as a manager, we understand, as a manager, right, the more or less the focus is on achievement of the goals. But can I do that by ignoring the people dimensions of the organization? May not be. So there has to be a mutual concern for both people dimensions and production dimensions, as defined by Black and Newton, right? Concern for people and concern for production has to be there. And another one important aspect of the thing is we do talk of the communication. You have to understand the differences between communication and language. Communication is the way the message is transferred from the sender to the receiver. It's decoded or coded, whatever it may be. But communication is and has to be a transparent way of understanding a particular scenario. So communication plays a very important role in managing the relationships that the workers do have with their higher authorities. Beyond that, the fourth factor that we need to take into consideration is the teams. No, definitely. Nowadays, it's not possible, feasible that each and every aspect should be done by individuals only. Neither the organizations are going to be benefited by individual contributions. Not possible. So unless and until we come out with a common effort, team effort, it will be very difficult for us to process the things, right? So that is the reason why most of the organizations nowadays, they focus on enhancing the team skills within their employees. So it can, all the objectives can be achieved in a team. But the important aspect is that whenever we talk of these teams, there may be certain negative aspects which are to be taken into consideration. Like whenever we talk of a team, we talk of conflicts, we talk of the misunderstandings among the team members. So those are the things which needed to be taken into consideration. But when we talk of these teams, the most important aspect that we need to develop within this team members is the cohesiveness. cohesiveness. Do I stand for others, or I'm happy by doing my job in the team? So when people are cohesive to one another, they can really focus on contributing towards others also. So as a whole, the team grows. You're talking of utilization of available resources. So that might be another one constraint, another big constraint that the organizations may have. So limited resources, interdependencies increase, right? And whenever there are interdependencies, chances of conflict will be more. Whatever sort of interdependencies you to talk of, may it be a simple interdependency, reciprocal interdependency, or a very complex interdependency, but it will directly affect the productivity of the organization. Right? So utilization of those resources available to the team is another one aspect that you need to take into consideration. So there has to be proper distribution of the things. Right? You're talking of collaborations among inter teams, the fifth factor. Inter teams means I'm talking of inter departments, maybe inter units, right? Maybe inter production units. So unless and until these inter teams, inter units to interact with one another frequently, it will be very difficult for us to develop that particular goal. Right? And finally, the organizational values, where organizational values like growth, impact, self-renewal ability, all of these things have to be taken into consideration. Talking of organizations nowadays, they are having a huge, threat because of these exogenous external factors, and they need to survive the utmost pressure created by these external factors. So how to do that? Like say every alternate day you do get a news of mergers, acquisitions, buybacks, strategic alliances, small business unit concepts, partnership concepts, investments, disinvestments, right? Acquisitions, mergers, all of these are the part of the organization's survival strategy at the present time. Right? So, if I do have all of these as a challenge, how can I cope with these kind of challenges? I have to go for the self-renewal abilities of the organization. So, instead of learning from the past and modifying the processes, why not we learn on a continuous basis, on a constant basis, and then we'll make an application of the said thing for the future decisions of the organization. So organizational learning and learning organizations are the two different concepts that you need to focus on. It has to be a continuous process. It has to be a proactive process, what we do say. So unless and until there is proper learning on the continuous basis, it will be very difficult for us to manage the things. So these are the 6 such important dimensions where managing it properly can add more and more value to the HRD systems of the organization, right? And as a whole, if we do talk of the process of human resource development, we say that all these processes are based on 4 different approaches, 4 different concepts, right? First one is individual, where we say that the individual's efficiency, effectiveness, his personality traits, personality attributes, its leadership traits, all of these things are to be developed within the individuals so that the individuals can, on a long run, contribute towards the organization. Second, we do talk of the role. So here we are talking of the role that is assigned to that particular person. So how that person can grow in that particular role, how that role can be, developed with that particular person's development. So that is what we need to understand. So here, whenever we talk of this role, first we need to understand the various competences that is required for the job performance. So we are talking of the competences of the jobs, right? Then the commitment level of the individuals towards their job. We will talk of the motivational factors, right? We will talk of the negative aspects also, like people get frustrated, people get stressed while playing their particular role. Right? The focus should be on creating a balance. Right? So when we do talk of these appraisals, what we do get as an outcome? To get that, the area which is a gray area for that particular individual employee, the area which requires to be developed within that particular employee, right? So more or less the training requirements of that particular individual employee can be considered. Right? Whenever we talk of the motivation level of the employees or the level of commitment that the employees do have, motivation is a self-driven force. No one can motivate me unless and until I want myself to be motivated. What we can do is that we can only, inspire other people to do something. We can only inspire them to do something. Other than that, we do not have any other option with us. So to be motivated or not to be motivated is a choice of the individual employee. But unless and until I observe, unless and until I find that the workers are motivated, they will not exhibit their commitment towards the organization. So my job is to motivate them also towards the job, towards performing their part in the organization. And at the same time, like if we to talk of this motivational theories, like very common, right? Motivational theory is Herzberg's two-factor theory. Right? What it says, there are certain factors which are called as intrinsic factors. There are certain factors which are called as extrinsic factors. Right? Intrinsic factors, extrinsic factors. Extrinsic factors are otherwise called as hygiene factors. Those factors which are not related to the individual, it is somehow rather related to the organization, to the job, to the role they do play, right? So all those exogenous factors we do talk of. So absence of those hygiene factors can really demotivate the employees. But presence of those hygiene factors may not motivate the employees. Presence of motivators, self-driven forces, right? The factors which are related to the concerned individual, internal. So those are the factors what you need to take into consideration, right? So where you are demotivated, you'll come out with certain frustration level, stress level, right? If you are motivated enough, you'll carry out the jobs at your end, right? Third thing that we need to focus on is the teams. We have understood that it's very important for us, because individually it's not possible for our part to take up each and every responsibilities of the organization. So people need to be focused on development of certain teams. The team collaborations, the team contributions which can make the achievement of the organization's goals in a smoother way. Right? But the problem is that mostly we do observe whenever there is a team, there is no such proper communication among the members, which of course is one of the primary requirements of a team. What it says that a team is a combination of people who interact one-to-one personally with each and every member in the organization, in that particular team, right? So communication is one of the most important aspects. Similarly, feedback related to the performances, related to the norms, should also be given to the team, right? As a whole, not mentioning any such individual, but team as a whole. You need to provide them that particular feedback, right? And the feedback should be constructive, not negative, right? That is what we need to understand. We always talk of teams. Wherever there is a group of people, there is always a probability of getting certain conflicts, right? So here we need to focus more on development of a collaborative approach than managing these conflicts, right? Fourth, we're talking of this organization, where we say that this organization's climate is one of the important aspects. Next, we are going to discuss that organization's climate. We're talking of the communication part, learning organization, change, organizational development. All of these are continuous processes, right? So that's the reason why I said no, this HRD is all about a continuous process of reaching towards the state of excellence, right? So here now we need to understand what an HRD climate is all about. We say HRD is all about developing these competences, motivation, and focusing on the development aspect of the employees. But whenever we do talk of the organization, most important aspect is the organizational level of factor, what we call it as the organization's culture, right? So HRD should not focus on individuals. HRD should focus both the individuals as the individuals and the individual in the organization. So organizational factors, organizational aspects are to be taken into consideration by considering the individual level of aspects of the organization, right? So whenever we to talk of this HRD climate, what we do understand from this is, in a layman's language, if I have to say, then this HRD climate is all about the perceptions of the people towards the culture. What perceptions do the employees of the organization do have towards the culture of the organization is called as the climate, right? Definition says, as given by Chandra, we say climate perceptions are psychologically meaningful molar descriptions that people can agree with the systems, practices, and procedures. So whatever things that are being in place for an organization, what perception do people have towards that? We need to understand that. We need to take that into consideration, right? And we always understand that the perceptions of the people are completely based on their own experiences, own set of psychological background, right? So perceptions may vary from person to person. But what is required over here is the establishment of a common perception among all the employees of the organization towards each and every rule, regulations, policies, plans, guidelines, whatever it may be, that may regulate the activities of the employees in the organization. So it has to be there. Right? So common differences that you can find out, right? Focus on result versus focus on work. Few such organizations where you'll find out the end result is everything. They are not concerned for the process part of it, right? So sometimes you have to come out with a manager's perspective of dealing with the things. Sometimes managers say, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm not bothered at all whether you leave or die, but I want my target. So achievement of the goal is everything for them. But whenever we talk of the process-oriented strategy, they believe that if the process is taken care of, then automatically goal can be achieved. Right? So you know to talk of that, whether the perceptions of the people in your organization are more directed towards the goal, or the perceptions of the people are more directed towards the process. According to that only, you can think of implementing your own strategy for the achievement of the goal, right? Individual accomplishments versus team accomplishments, where you know sometimes people do come out with the notion that I'm assigned with a particular task. Let me be responsible for that particular task. Why should I put my nose in other tasks? Beyond that, whenever we talk of William Ouch's theory Z, what it says, there are extreme end practices, east part of the world, and there are extreme west part of the world. They have taken the kind of practices they do have and they compared, right? So when I do refer to Japanese culture, it is no way related with individualism. It's a collectivist approach. But when I refer it to US culture, maybe they all are fascinated by the individual accomplishments, not accomplishments of the team. Let us say it's my job, let me do my duties and responsibilities. Why should I bother others? Or something like that, right? So individual accomplishments versus team accomplishments. Initiative, risk-taking versus not rocking the boat. HRD requires to be more dynamic in nature. So, do I follow whatever I do follow for past years? So, can I have all of those policies, plans, rules, regulations which was amended maybe 10 years or 20 years before and make an application of that now? Orthodox systems won't work anymore. Orthodox systems won't work anymore. So people have to promote a culture of innovation. People have to promote a culture of risk-taking, that entrepreneurial abilities are to be developed within the people, right? We will talk of individual gains versus organizational objectives. What do you think? Like we discussed this earlier also, performance appraisal system, which earlier used to evaluate individual contribution, right? Nowadays, the performance management system focuses on creating a link between the organization's goals to the individual's goals. So that is how, when we do talk of the individuals contributing towards the organization, now we must take that aspect. Individuals' contributions are there, but their contributions must be aligned towards the goals of the organization. That's what we need to understand. Top mandate versus dealing with people versus avoidance of unpleasant actions. How do I take all of those things? Right? So, if I do have a set of rules, regulations, do I need to strictly follow that? But there can be exceptions too. Right? Question is whether we are practicing the principle of equity or not. Every employee should be treated as human beings first. So, as a human being, they do have certain rights, and that is what that needed to be addressed. Relative importance of participating in the management versus authoritarian management. So nowadays we do say that the best way to manage or handle the situation is by the way of having participation of the workers, participative style of management. So let the workers, let the bottom line executives be a part of the decision making process. And whenever we to talk of this bottom line executives to be the part of the decision making process, whether it is really carried out or just it is being sown in pen and paper only. Okay? So we need to understand all of those aspects, and the perceptions of the people of all of those aspects will define the HRD climate itself. So whenever we talk of this HRD climate and organizational climate, of course these are few such things. HRD climate is a part of the organizational climate. You need to understand that. It's all about perceptions of the employees on development of an organization. Right? Each and every mindset should have that development orientation. Right? We do talk of a tendency at all levels to treat the people as most important resources. So somehow or other you'll also find out that people do undermine few such departments which are not directly involved in the production process, right? So it's all about how do I come out with dealing with people at all the levels in the organization. So people may it be the unskilled worker to may it be the highly skilled worker. I should treat them in a different way altogether, beyond these job parameters I'm talking of, right? We do talk of developing competencies of the job of the manager and supervisor. Nowadays, we do say that each and every manager is a line manager because you have to deal with people, you have to deal with human resources, right? So, what becomes essential for this, line managers or the managers working with the workers at the bottom is to develop their own set of competencies. So these are the things that we are going to discuss it in future classes, right? Maybe module 2 it is there, where we need to understand that whenever there is a individualistic approach, right? The focus should be on the capabilities of the employees, right? And when there is a holistic approach, the focus should be on the organizational processes. But in between, the managers, the supervisors, they need to develop certain skills within themselves. Right? Employees need to follow certain aspects of the organization. All of those things are to be taken into consideration. These are the things that we're going to discuss in some of our future classes. Right? So you should have faith in the communication of the employees. Right? There has to be, or the dyadic relationship, as we discussed, has to be based on the factor of trust. There has to be open communications and discussions. We are living in a knowledge world. Everything is transparent. Everything is, like being confining itself to certain data which are available easily. So nothing is there which we can hide it from the workers. So let them understand. So let them go through the basic process of the organization. Right? So communications, discussions, all of those things. Risk-taking experimentation processes we have understood, making efforts to help the individual employees to cope with any kind of stress, if at all they do have. Right? So any kind of effort that the managers can take to groom the employees, develop the employees, train the employees, right? Overcome some sort of stress or hardships of life. All of those things are to be considered, right? A general climate of trust, team spirit, and the tendency to discourage stereotypes and favoritisms. These are the things what you need to avoid actually, biasnesses at the place of work, right? So no such aspect of the organization are to be considered with all favoritism. It has to be unique for all. It has to be equal for all. The principle of equity should be there. Okay? And relevant supportive HR practices, HRD practices is what that need to take into consideration. But whenever we do talk of the climate or establishing the climate, we have understood climate is all about the perceptions of the people towards the organization's culture. How do the people, how do the employees, workers do perceive the organizational processes, rules, regulations, policies, plans, guidelines, culture, everything that defines the climate of the organization. So here we do talk of the basic aspects which really contribute for enhancing the climate of the organization is the top management style and philosophy. How do the managers, supervisors treat the employees of the organization? We have understood with the basic aspects, maybe the principles and practices of management paper is what where you can have all of these details available, right? So starting from the very ancient days, we have autocratic or authoritarian style of management, where the workers are no more considered for the decision making process. Only thing is that they are imposed with certain decisions what the workers need to carry it out. We have got bureaucratic style of management, where everything is rule based. Rules and regulations are there, right? So anyone who falls in that particular category have to be abided by those kind of rules and regulations, right? We talked of participative style of management. Participative style of management says workers are to be considered as a business partner, where they do also take part in the decision making process of the organization. So the concept emerged. We come out with many such initiatives under this workers participation management scheme. We have unit councils, sub councils, joint management councils, works committees. All of these are the forums through which workers can take part in the decision making process. But considering that, does the management has that philosophy of involving workers in the decision making process? That has to be taken into consideration, right? So participative style, some or other we can also think of benevolent style. Benevolent is treating your employees as your kids, looking after all of their welfare aspects, helping them to cope with the organization and have their livelihoods, all of those things, right? So what is the approach that the management of the organization is having towards the workers, towards the employees, is that matters a lot, right? We do talk of personal policies of the organization, starting from job analysis or role analysis to role profiling, then recruitment processes, selection processes, or as together procurement processes, right? We are talking of placements, inductions, orientations, payroll related aspects, performance appraisals, training development, IR, industrial relations, labor welfare, all of those policies related to all of those verticals of the organization, they should be focused on. HRD instruments and systems, as if we have understood, it's all about the tools, right? And the basic flow of operations in the organization, systems we talk of, right? So how these HRD tools and the systems are interlinked, we're talking of that. Self-renewal mechanism we have already discussed. Attitude of this personnel and HRD staff, do they really have a positive attitude towards growth and development? Do they really have an adaptable attitude towards any kind of transformation that is being expected from the organization, right? So the attitude matters. And finally, we do say, as I was telling you, nowadays each and every manager is a line manager. So, what is the commitment level of these line managers towards the implementation of the climate or perceptions of the people? Having a positive perceptions of the people is, these are the important aspects. So finally, let us talk of the basic process of HRD climate. When we do say that it's all about developing the perception, a positive perception of the people, right, towards the organization, towards the job, you need to come out with that, right? So the first left column you can see that deals with all those HRD mechanisms as a whole, and some things are like the instruments that they may have or subsystems that they may have, right? We do talk of the second column, which represents the HRD processes, climate variables. Third column is HRD outcome variables. Fourth column is organizational effectiveness. So if I do talk of the various HRD mechanisms, the first we do come out with is HRD department as a whole. So most of the organizations nowadays, they have made a segregation in a sense. They say the admin department should be removed from the HR department. The role and responsibilities of HR people and the roles and responsibilities of admin department are different from one, right? So if you do have this HRD department, I think like that, we are having other mechanisms like appraisal reviews, right? And objective is not to facilitate, personal decisions. Objective is to identify the loopholes, the gray areas, the potential areas which can be developed, right? So if the employee is not performing, the answer should be taken into consideration first. Why he is not performing? According to that, we can have our own strategies, right? We can talk of reviewing discussions, feedbacks. These are most important aspects nowadays. Performance appraisal, say, like it has been observed there may be thousands of such reasons for which the employees of the organization may not perform. Not necessarily that every time they do lack in terms of their skill, knowledge, and abilities. It may be a possibility that the individual employees are disturbed, maybe psychologically, because of their family issues, maybe because of their financial issues, maybe because of any other. Right? So as a manager, if I do need to improve the productivity of the employees, I must say that this productivity of the employees are to be enhanced by understanding their roles. So a review discussion should be there. If possible, go for a one-to-one review discussion. Right? One-to-one review discussion where you can explore most of the problem areas of the individuals. Right? We are talking of giving them a feedback related to their performances. The feedback should be in a positive way. It should not be, a critics kind of thing, right? Role analysis, we have understood. Potential development, right? It's all about like when we to say potential development, we say that it's about efficacies of the people, capabilities of the people. We are no more concerned for the efficiency of the people. We want to make the best possible utilization of human resources at the place of work. So efficacies is what that you need to consider, right? So potential development will focus on development of the capabilities whereby people can take up more and more challenging jobs, responsible positions, all of them. And then we do talk of training, communication policies. Job rotation is another one important aspect, important dimensions of the organization. But it says, when I move up in the organizational hierarchy, I move through a proper succession planning channel, right? I need to have the working knowledge of the entire organization. Right? So I'm working in a very lower level position now, but when I move up in the organizational hierarchy and I go to the top level positions, right? So I cannot say that I'm not aware of sales or production or R&D. You need to have the working knowledge of each and every dimension, and that is the reason why job rotation is most important. OD exercises we to talk of, action research methods. If at all there is a problem, then what method you are adopting to reach to the root cause of that particular problem, you need to take into consideration. So OD exercises, job enrichment, enlargement, addition of values, addition of more and more duties and responsibilities. So these are the various subsystems or instruments that will lead to the HRD processes. Processes is you need to have like role clarity. Right? Now, what will happen if there will be a role mismatch? We do come out with three different sort of roles that people do play. One is a actual role, one is a enacted role, one is a expected role. The expected role, enacted role, and the actual role. So suppose I do join an organization. Organizations do have certain expectations from me. So that is the expected role that I have to play. Enacted is what I perceive about the job, and I may have different sort of opinion about the job, but actual is what actually I'm doing. Now, if the actual role and the expected role will not match with one another, means if whatever the organization is expecting from me, but my job profile doesn't match with that, so in that case, it will be a role conflict. Okay. Similarly, if the actual role doesn't match with the enacted role, right? What I have perceived is called as a role ambiguity. So in either of these cases, either you talk of role conflict or role ambiguity, will always lead. These are the situations which will always lead to a negative aspect of the job, right? So here you need to consider proper role clarity should be there. Awareness of competence is required to the performance of the job, right? And more or less, we do talk of this, octopus culture of the organization. Organizations must exhibit their openness, collaborations, proactions, experimentations, is autonomy, confrontation, and expectation. Experiments or the energies that you need to talk of to be developed within the employees, right? So, is it that the organization is open to the exogenous factors, or you are having a closed territory within which you are operating? Is your employees open to learning, open to new things, open to innovations? So that sort of culture we need to promote. C for collaboration. So we have already discussed that, right? And whenever we talk of collaborations, we do talk of teams, we do talk of inter teams, the kind of relationship that all those departments do have among themselves, and the kind of effort that all these departments put together towards the achievement of the goal, right? Collaborations. Then trustworthiness. Whenever there is a team, I said team, groups, we talk of that, we do talk of the conflict. So if at all I need to manage that conflict, I need to overcome all of those negative aspects, then I need to develop that level of trust. Right? We need to talk of the authenticity, authentic approach. So whatever is genuine, you need to focus on that, not that what is being expected out of the entire process, right? And to talk of pro-action, why should we deal with the grievances of the employees? Why not take certain actions prior to the generation of these grievances? Okay. So that's the reason why we have understood that there is a transition from collective bargaining to individualized bargaining, individual bargaining, right? So all those individuals' requirements are to be considered, are to be taken into like are most valuable for those organizations. Deal individuals as an individual, right? So pro-action. Then we do talk of autonomy. That will develop a sense of ownership, loyalty, commitment, right? And towards the end, confrontation. Confrontation is it's okay. Like it's all about facing the realities, facing the truth, confronting to the basic processes of the organization, and the experimentation that we need to talk of, right? Octopus culture. So all these HRD processes, HRD climate variables focuses on that. Beyond that, certain other aspects like value generation, we do talk of communication, we do talk of fair rewards, the principle of equity, unbiased data, all of those things do matter a lot. So it the basic HRD processes are actually supported by the factors like the personal policies of the organization, like what your HR manual says, what your HR policy says on recruitment, on appraisals, on training and development, on compensation, on payrolls, right, on industrial relations, on grievance settlement, on dispute management, whatever it may be. All those policies related to the management of human resources are to be considered. Okay. Top management style, as we discussed earlier also, like, may it be authoritarian, may it be bureaucratic, may it be participative, whatever it may be. So based on the top management's approach, you can think of that. And to what extent is top management or the organization is investing on HRD activities, on growth and development activities. Okay. So if I do have the instruments with me, I do have the processes with me. So if I do make an application of these instruments with proper processes, then definitely I'll come out with certain outcomes within the people. Those outcomes are called as the HRD outcomes. So these are the outcomes what you can look into. These are the outcomes among the people that you'll see. So people will automatically become more competent, right? So they will have better or developed roles. They will have high level of commitment towards the work. They'll have involvement in their job, right? They'll develop problem solving abilities, decisional abilities, judgmental abilities, will be able to manage the human resources in an efficient and effective way so that the wastages can be reduced, right? We'll have better job satisfaction, better work environment, better motivation among the employees, right? So overall, we can have a conducive work environment where people will exhibit their team skills, people will exhibit more value towards the organization. So HRD mechanisms, systems, subsystems with HRD processes will lead to these outcomes among the workers. And the outcomes that we have discussed right now with the workers, if being taken into consideration, will lead to organization's objectives. Organizational objectives are like, we say, higher productivity, growth and development. Organizations are going for expansions of their business, diversification, cost reduction, higher profits, better images, right? So all of those are the organizational level of outcomes. So if of course these organizational outcomes are affected by certain exogenous factors like your environment, technology, resources, like that. But if I want the organizational objectives to be achieved by properly managing the human resources, I need to focus on the HRD mechanisms or the subsystems or the instruments so that through a particular process, the organizational objectives can be achieved. So let us end it over here, and we have understood the concept of climate, right, where perceptions of the people can be there towards the organization. Now, next class we will discuss some other aspects of like this HRD in relation to the people dimensions, and certain other aspects we can also cover it up in the next class. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day.